people who watch this show regularly, welcome. If you're not, I'm a fan. When I say I'm a fan, I love delving into world religions. I love religious conversations. I grew up in the Catholic Church, had a lot of church experience in my life, and I love it. And one of the things that frustrates me most of all about like a modern day, and I guess I'm talking about Christianity because that's sort of my bag, is that the worst thing about the message of that long-haired hippie who was around a couple of thousand years ago is how people twist and uses words to do what I believe is the opposite of what the message was. The basic message is look after the widows and orphans, right? That's the basic message. Look after the vulnerable. Look after those that are worse off than you. If you've got something, give it to them. That's the messages. So what happened today is, in my opinion, the best kind of messaging from that aspect of that religion, or that kind of covering of the religion, happened by Bishop, and I'm going to go with Budde, B-U-D-D-E, where she spoke to Donald Trump and she basically encouraged and pleaded with Donald Trump that if he is this Christian that he claims he is, he reckons he's been saved by God. That's what he's at least telling people. If he's going to wear that mantle, could he please start acting a bit more like the feature character in that religion, Jesus, and look after those that need looking after? And this is 2.5 minutes. I'm going to play it all because even if you're not a religion dude or dudette, cool. This is a good example of what this world religion should be doing from the front, right? Not what we see mostly in our media, not what the conservative right do in America. This is the messaging that that socialist dude 2,000 years ago would, I think, in my opinion, approve.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and Independent.
Good J.D. Vance. Classless. Like, look, his wife, class. J.D. Vance, classless. There is going to be times where you hear something that you disagree with. We talked about that this evening to do with this podcast. They might disagree with this message, but look at the classless way he acts. And don't worry, Donald Trump's going to get on the classless act, even if you disagree from the front during this conversation.
And families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants.
Those ones that speak
who
Spanish.
Wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens.
Okay, you watching Trump now? His point of being classless?
Or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world.
Now, I'll tell you something. Having been involved in, a lot of, actually, I'll go back because it's probably, I shouldn't have cut out maybe, because you do want to see the response of Trump and Vance when it cuts back to them and they're finished.
See, this is why I don't go to church, JD.
And let me tell you something, right? As from someone who's had a lot of experience within the church, I'm looking at the chat right now, right? And what that did, what that conversation did, what that person up the front, that bishop did, was a better message of what the whole religion is about than all the blimmin' right-wing conservative, yada, like this kind of stuff. Fuck, this is good. They didn't expect this. Said with God's love. Even boom. Jason's saying boom. It's like, what Jason? Obviously, they're doing it because it's embarrassing Trump, but it's because the message is actually accurate too. And so I look at this and I go, if you're a religious person that's trying to sell a religious message, the people, and I don't know the people in the chat whether they're religious or not, but I would guess, statistically speaking, unlikely, are actually for the message they just heard. What they're against is this 2025 capitalist version of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, who we're gonna sacrifice this month by only using 2 of our family cars, not 3. That's what they're against. Sorry, Chewie.
So you mentioned that Trump's a man of class, and I'm sure sitting there in silent reflection, he might have reflected on some of the things that he said or he's done, the things that he's campaigned on, the things that he's written into executive orders straight out of the gates. And I'm sure he wasn't going to shit his brains out all over Truth Social. I'm not going to do his accent because I do a terrible Trump impression. The so-called bishop who spoke at the national prayer service on Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics.
No, hang on. Couldn't you just hear the hate in her voice? Like, didn't she just come across as a hateful person? Couldn't you hear it?
Dripping. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place in the USA. Apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. No strippers, you see. She's not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. T.
I have a clip from CNN. Let's play it, because CNN got the bishop on and they basically asked about it. And so in this CNN clip, why did you do it? That's the question. Let's have a listen.
What made you decide to say all that today?
Well, these are the people that I know. These are not abstract people for me. These are actual people that I know. So I wanted to speak on their behalf. I wanted to present a vision of what unity can look like in this country that is transcending of differences and viewpoints and acknowledging our common humanity.
Yes.
I wanted to speak in such a way that reflected that dignity and respect, but I also wanted to bring into that space the real humanity of the people that I was referencing.
Now, he was asked about...
They give Donald Trump some airtime now. He's actually, when he was speaking, when some reporter asked him, he was more middle of the road than that whatever you call it. It's not an excretion, a truth, a T cell. I don't know. Went out, but
I'm real conflicted on religion. Look, religious institutions like the church have done incredible damage over the years.
100%.
And they can enable people, shitty people, to justify their actions. in just the most horrible way. But that sort of faith and belief can also make people do some amazingly generous things and live their life. And if it works, it works. But to believe that Trump should be able to set foot in a church and not spontaneously combust, a covetous man who has spent his whole life trying to accumulate wealth, a sexual offender, a rapist, a braggart, a blowhard, a racist. The fact that he was allowed to step foot in a place of worship just baffles me. Did you see when he was sworn in, he didn't put his hand on the Bible?
100%. And you know what I tweeted out? I tweeted out, imagine what the conservative evangelical right wing would have done if Barack Hussein Obama had have refused to put his hand on the Bible. But what do we hear about Trump? Crickets. Nothing.
He's too busy selling Bibles made in China with the Constitution printed in the front of it. It's fucking madness.
This is one other thing, right? And because what we do here is, we understand a little bit about messaging. It's sort of what we do. We package up stories and we deliver them to you. If you are a religious broadcaster, if you are a religious entity and you want to understand how to get your message out to a broader range of people, stop protesting pride, the marches. Stop protesting pride marches. Stop doing that. Do what you do. That message there will be taken on board and agreed with by an inordinate amount of people outside the church. Painting out the pride flag on a road will piss all of those people off. If your message is for outside of your building, that's the message, not the gays are bad and trans cause earthquakes. So she's actually selling your product better than you, to look at it from a marketing point of view, which means you don't get your product. You don't understand your product because that's the product. Jesus was a socialist. Sorry to tell you that. Told the rich young ruler to give everything up and follow him. He had one garment. He owned one garment, allegedly. That's how the stories go.
One of the things that I'd like to draw a straight line between is one of the things when Jimmy Carter was made president. One of the things that the right wing, at that point, the Republicans made a big thing about the fact that he still owned a commercial peanut farm. And they made him sell his family peanut farm because it was a conflict of interest. And that a sitting president shouldn't have a commercial conflict of interest. Flash forward to now, and we have a president that is selling memes and cryptocurrency.
Well, fake cryptocurrency, ripping people off. Life savings have disappeared.
Absolutely. It's remarkable how quick people can turn on their deeply held convictions when it's one of their team doing it. And I think one thing that should always be held up above everything else is personal integrity. And when I look at American politicians, almost to a man, is an absolute lack of personal integrity. I don't know how you fix that.
I just want to apologize as well. We do like to correct our mistakes. I said, the church talking about that trans causes earthquakes. Of course, it wasn't trans. It was gay marriage. Gay marriage caused the earthquakes. I want to apologize to the trans community that I threw you under the bus like that. But just for people who didn't know that, this is like a high profile, quote unquote, Christian, and I'm definitely putting air quotes around that, preacher, just reminding you that, New Zealand preacher is facing backlash after saying that the earthquakes could be caused by homosexuality. That message, A, is inaccurate, but because it's inaccurate, it doesn't do what you think it's going to do. Your little clique of people who want to just slap your back and say, yes, you're right, fine, and then jump, 15 years later, they're the ones who are then painting over the pride walkways. That's not the message. The message was what you just heard from that bishop. Look after the vulnerable. Look after the widows and orphans. Give the person stuff off your back. Make sure that those who need help get it. That's the message. And maybe that's why the church is so unliked and unlikable. And so I think there's something like 5% of New Zealanders have an active involvement with the church. Like we have this, like the Catholic Church, for example, is more cultural. Like if you go to Spain, everyone's Catholic. Not everyone goes to church. It's actually a cultural thing, right? But if you nut it down to actually who attends, it's like under 5%. So therefore, 95% of people think you're a load of shit and you need to learn what the message of your beliefs actually are, and you just heard it. Learn from it.
Personally, I think if someone like Tamaki, these fire and brimstone preachers, if they actually believed the things that they said about the gay community, they wouldn't say anything. Because if you're saying that the entire LGBTQ plus community had the power to summon deadly storms and earthquakes, and your house isn't instantly atomized and sunk into the ground, like if they had that power, dude, you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. And then the flip side of that is, if your argument is that God is so angry at us for being nice to gay people and allowing them to exist, your God's a cunt.
Yeah. Fair. And like, religious people. Chewie.
You're talking about
Chewie. Give me a sec. This is important. Religious people, you actually need to hear that message. I was talking to someone in the weekend who was saying about, how lots of New Zealanders think, churches are boring and they've done horrible things. And I go, yeah. Do you know why they think that? Because they have. People who live inside the walls of the church in the old days, like this story of this guy around 2,000 years ago, all he did was look outside. All he did was fight against the church. People have probably heard the stories about the word Pharisees. Pharisees were like the priests and the pastors of the time. Jesus, he fought against them all the time. He always looked out, whereas the church today always looks in. And what you've just said, Chewie, the church today needs to hear and actually come to terms with and figure out how to look out like that bishop did and think of others ahead of themselves. It's like people who talk about you vote for someone who you don't know. You vote for someone who is worse off than you. You live your life to help people who are worse off than you. That's the message. That's not what you hear in 2025 in Western civilization churches in general. Want to throw all of them under the bus.
There's heaps of examples of religious leaders speaking truth to power and putting their bodies on the line. Like you think about the American Civil Rights Movement, and a lot of the core group of the Freedom Marches were religious leaders and local preachers and that sort of thing. They saw an injustice and they spoke up. That's exactly what I would expect from a religious leader. And then you look at a monolithic organization like the Catholic Church, and you sit there and you go, oh, thousands of years of fucking bad stuff, my dudes. And you know what the Catholic Church needs to do? Sit there and take their fucking lumps.
Yep, 100%.
Because you can't debate it. You can't debate it. You were shuffling pedophiles around for decades. You just got to go, oh, yeah, our bad. I guess we've got about 400 years to make it up to you.